Kenna Carlson. I am a research associate with Work2Zero, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Today is the second in our three-part Green Cross Awards webinar series. The Green Cross for Safety Innovation Award is designed to recognize individuals or organizations who are addressing long-held safety challenges through new or novel approaches. And our webinar series was designed to give these organizations a platform to talk about some of the really great work that they have been doing. And as a reminder, the Green Cross celebration will be held next week, September 20th in San Diego, California, at the NSC Congress event. For more information, you can go on to nsc.org/support-NSC. Or you can just take a picture of that QR code up on the screen and it'll take you directly there. Today we are joined by Aware360, who's going to be talking about some of the work that they have been doing in the area of safety innovation. If you are unable to join any of our other webinars, they are being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. And tomorrow we will be hosting Quanta Services at the same time, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. But without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to our friends over at Aware360, Daryl and Jim. If you guys could go ahead and introduce yourselves to everyone.
Great. Thanks, Ken. I was just making one adjustment to my slides, so I thought you might talk another minute. so thanks for the introduction. I appreciate the opportunity. My name's Daryl Graham. I am the SVP Sales and Marketing here at Aware360, and joined by our COO Jim McDade. Real excited to have a little bit of time with you here this morning and share our story. So, yeah, Jim, did you want to say a few words?
No, just take it away.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I'll present my screen. And through the magic of technology, hopefully everyone can see that okay. Yeah, good. So I'm just going to move from this on to this slide here. And just as a bit of a way of introducing ourselves to you. So Aware360, we are a Calgary, Alberta, Canada-based technology company. And where we fit into the work that we do today with Work2Zero and Jim's participation on the Work2Zero Council, it's represented in this slide. And we really believe in what we're calling this worker safety evolution from left to right. And if we think of the past as it relates to worker safety, it often came from this idea of needing to be compliant, either compliant to perhaps industry standards, state standards, or even organizational standards and policies. But now we're evolving from this compliance to a more proactive approach, which naturally leads us, or ideally leads us, to the preventative side of worker safety. And that, of course, is aligned with the quest of the Work2Zero program, which is to end workplace fatalities by the year 2050 through the use of technology. And that's really where we fit in, is leveraging our capabilities and our technology to help manage organizations through this evolution, with the ultimate goal, of course, of saving lives and preventing accidents, injuries, and fatalities in the workplace. Now, that's the goal. How do we do that? So how do we do that? Well, we do that through, and from our perspective, so we are a technology company, and how we are different from many in this space is by leveraging our people-centric IoT platform. And that's where we really like to start when we have conversations with organizations. It's about the workers, it's about their people. The technology comes, but it's really a mechanism to deliver the outcome. And what the outcome is really what organizations are interested in. Technology is more of a means to an end. Now, we're biased. We think that we've got some of the best technology, and we partner with the best in class hardware and software providers. But really, this is a good representation of our focus in the safety outcomes being at-risk worker safety. So an at-risk worker, we'll touch on a little bit on this on the next slide, but it tends to be more of a industrial-based mobile workforce as opposed to potentially bankers or those in the accounting industry. But we use technology to help deliver safe outcomes for those types of workers. This concept of fit for duty or fitness for duty, we have solutions that help to deliver confidence by the worker and the organization that their workers are in fact fit to do the task ahead of them. And this really is in the preventative, proactive side, because if somebody is not fit or maybe not at the top of their game, there's an opportunity to have a discussion and intervene even before the higher risk activity starts. A big part of our outcomes also include driver safety. We know that driving is the riskiest activity that a worker can take on during their day. And most workers who drive are not professional drivers in the sense that they don't necessarily have the driving to support the activity. Even though we all think we're great drivers, we're not necessarily all great drivers. So we have technology to help with real-time outcomes as it relates to this, which really is a key theme for us in all of our deliverables, is around real-time awareness and real-time safety outcomes, again, in the spirit of preventative safety. And finally, a lot of our outcomes rely on, of course, technology. So it's the utilization of, it could be smartphones. That's a kind of a typical one. That's an easy one. But more and more what we see happening and part of this evolution is the growth in wearables and being able to proactively measure an individual's, for example, maybe as it relates to heat stresses, be able to manage something like a heart rate, which can be a leading indicator towards somebody who is on the path towards suffering a heat-related incident, and to be able to intervene prior to it becoming more of a serious situation. So we work with different applications, hardware. We embrace the ecosystem of technology in bringing this information into, and we knit it together with our own People IoT platform. Now, from where do we work, or what types of industries are we working in? This is a really good, I think, visual of the different areas we work in. The origins of our business is primarily, or was, in the oil and gas industry. So we're based up here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Lots of oil and gas industry here, similar to what you might see in other parts, of course, of the US. But that industry in the early days was really aligned to this idea of at-risk workers, lone workers, remote workers. But what we've seen, again, part of this evolution is a real change in organizational mindset around not just the safety of their workers, but the safety and the well-being of their workers. So that's taken us across a number of different industries, from oil and gas, utilities, field services, and home healthcare being a couple of key examples in areas that we work in. So from oil and gas to home healthcare, quite a different day in the life of, but the risks associated with those workers. These are slip, trips, falls, so our standard high-risk activities for workers, but also including environmental risks, or including social interaction and the risks that take place, not to mention driving, as I referenced earlier. So these types of risks tend to run quite horizontally across the different industries we work in, and that's why we're called upon.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Daryl. Taking this and talking a little bit more about the technology itself, what does the adoption process look like for any of your solutions?
Mm-hmm. Well, we follow a kind of a model that's based around these different representatives of people, technology, and process. And I'll probably just reflect for a moment back on the concept that I shared earlier, that people aren't really buying the technology per se. Of course, they are when it comes to the business at the end of the day. But what they're looking for are the outcomes that can be delivered. And so we spend a lot of time in this adoption of the technology to lead towards the outcome in these three areas. And a big part of our focus, quite frankly, is around the change management side of things. And what we find is it's not necessarily, if you think about maybe a really simple example of moving from one photocopier to a different photocopier made by another manufacturer. Well, at the end of the day, the technology is pretty similar. You put a paper and you press a button and out comes copies. For us, we're not necessarily displacing existing solutions that are heavily entrenched, or we might be displacing a number of different versions of safety solutions that we need some time as part of that change management process to understand kind of their current state, what the future state looks like, and how do we build a path from A to Z in supporting the adoption of that. So change management, that would include things like certainly training, communication, real transparency around the outcome and the use of the data that's also collected as part of this.
Daryl,
Yeah.
Daryl, one thing I'd like to add is we prefer to work with very large enterprises that have multiple different use cases. So multiple different types of workers in different situations. Mm-hmm. So we integrate a lot of different devices, everything from gas detectors and satellite devices to apps, wearables, that sort of thing. So the technology is kind of the easy part of it because it's been proven to work. When you're working in large enterprises with different groups of people, they often have very unique requirements, but B, understanding and acceptance of technology depending on the role they do. So if someone's working remotely, may be very different than a meter reader in an urban area. And so that adoption has to be adapted to those different groups, their unique needs beyond just the technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think just picking up on the technology piece, as Jim mentioned, we have a number of different devices that we've integrated into our People IoT platform because of the different use cases. So from satellite detectors to wearables, smartphones, satellite devices, kind of everything in between. Many of our clients will utilize different technology based on those use cases. And as much as possible, we'd like to leverage existing technology and help to either repurpose that for safety outcomes or help them gain even a stronger ROI on an existing investment. The last piece here on process, I mean, it's sort of tied into what Jim was touching on relative to adoption, but it's about ensuring that the utilization of the tool is part of their day-to-day operations, and it's not disruptive to what they do. Like most organizations, they're busy already doing what they do for the organization. So adding a new process shouldn't be a distraction to that work. It really should be complementary. And so we work to make sure that there's a smooth process and it dovetails into existing operations. That certainly helps with the adoption rate as well and utilization at the end of the day.
Excellent. And you touched on it a bit, and especially as you were talking more about the, human-centric side of things. But can you talk a little bit about what some of the more common barriers or questions that organizations have for you around technology?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this slide captures the four probably core, and there's of course subsets to many of these. We touched on, this is a good segue really from the last discussion around change management. So don't need to spend a lot of time here, but this is a really important part, and it tends to, when we get to some alignment that this is the right fit, what we have to offer, then it becomes this discussion around, okay, well, how do we operationalize this, and how do we begin to work through those change management items, which sometimes could include doing a pilot, for example. So we've got some learnings within that organization, not testing the technology so much. As Jim mentioned, we've got tens of thousands of workers using our solutions every day. It's more about how will it work inside this organization and work within their operations. So that's a big part of it. I'm going to kind of flip over to the bottom right around internal sponsorship. Think of this maybe another way of saying priority within the organization. So most of the large enterprises and frankly, most businesses would put worker safety at the forefront of their culture and the priorities of their organization. It's the most important thing you'll see on their websites. And it's true, but there's also this idea of, well, investing in that commitment, and what does that investment look like, and where does it align to other investments in the growth of the business. So securing that internal sponsorship, ensuring that this is a priority, can be a barrier, although we have a lot of success and track records with existing clients to show the value around implementations. And that kind of takes me to the top right around ROI. And ROI can be measured in a number of different ways. In many cases, and we see this with a lot of our clients who have workers in social risks, the ROI is the employee feels safe, that they feel safe going to work, or they know that if something were to happen, that help is not far away and help is on the way. So providing that just general comfort. I'm not sure how you might measure that, but it's a high level of ROI. There's also very tangible financial savings to an organization if you think about the reduction and the mitigation of real accidents, insurance claims, workers' comp, having to hire or train an employee to replace someone who may be off work due to an accident or injury. So there's certainly very financial returns on solutions that we have to offer. But it's a discussion if we think about in the context of barriers. And then our absolute favorite in the bottom left, I saved the best for last, is when we get into discussions with organizations around privacy and security. And I'm laughing a bit because we don't get too far relative to large deployments if we don't clear these particular hurdles. So we're very used to it. From a privacy standpoint, we have certifications around the privacy and the protection of our clients' data, but also processes in place where only those with the right permissions within an organization can in fact see the data. So lots on that front. And then on the security side of things, we leverage a number of different security protocols to ensure that the data collected is protected. But we do operate on the Microsoft Azure system, and we leverage and benefit from the fabric of their safety mechanisms in place as well.
Well, thank you for sharing, Daryl. Last question from me, and then we will turn it over to the audience for any questions they may have. As a reminder, you guys can always leave any questions in the Q&A chat box on the bottom of the Zoom tab. But could you share an example of how this is being used in an organization?
Yeah, I've got a great story we love to share, and I do see that there is a question in the chat, so we'll definitely get to that. This is a favorite story that we love to share for a couple of reasons. So let me tell the story to start with. So we have an organization that we've worked with for a number of years. They work on both sides of the border in the oil and gas industry. They've got about 600 to 700 of their field workers. in the oil and gas industry who are using our solution in a combination of different devices, smartphones and satellite devices. And this is a great example of a worker and her partner who were traveling through a mountainous region and were swept off of the road in a mudslide. And you can see on the top right visualization of that accident. And what happened in this case is these workers were off the road, down the ravine, and nobody knew where they were. There weren't any vehicles immediately behind them. So when this service truck on the bottom left showed up, all they saw was the mudslide. They didn't see the truck down the ravine. So they were able to use our real-time technology through the satellite device to reach our real-time monitors, to let them know that they're there, and to help first responders locate them and extract them from the vehicle as they were literally hanging upside down. So they were quite broken up, but they did have a full recovery. So it's a great success story from that standpoint. The other part to the story is with Crescent Point, like many of our industries or clients, they support and embrace their workers using the technology after hours as well. So it's not just about, we don't just care about you being safe during working hours. You know, it's back to the culture. We care about you being safe throughout your day. And there's no additional fee for maintaining somebody's safety after work hours. So it really was, it's a great messaging from the organization to their employees, and certainly has safety outcomes that that typically may not be realized. And that we think was in addition to saving the lives, just really reinforcing the use of safety technology in the workplace.
So Daryl, in fact, they were off the clock when this accident happened, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a really great story. Thank you for sharing that. Well, at this point, we will turn it over to any audience questions. First question we have, which you touched on a little bit, is how do we overcome privacy concerns and get workers engaged in technology rather than fearful of it?
Mm-hmm. A couple of thoughts on that, and Jim, if you, of course, jump in. So a couple of thoughts. First of all, it's really important that the organizations are transparent with their employees around the purpose of this technology or this deployment. And by messaging very clearly that it's a safety-oriented outcome, how the data collected will be used to support safety outcomes. It's not about disciplinary action, especially if there's a unionized environment that you're working in and working with them. The other part of that we hear quite commonly, and maybe this ties to the next question, because we do use GPS technology in many of our solutions, is this idea of being tracked or Big Brother's watching. And a couple of thoughts around that is, generally speaking, only the people that have access to the location services or the locations of workers are our monitors. So arm's distance from the organization, arm's reach distance from the organization. But we also have the ability to configure our solutions that they're only collecting location information in the event of an emergency. So it's not about tracking somebody throughout the day. It's about, for example, having a fall that's detected or an SOS. That creates a real-time alert that then pulls their location information for our monitor to respond and manage to. So there's lots of ways to address it that we just, through the discussions, we can help those conversations internally.
Excellent. Second question. Can you talk about any labor concerns that you've navigated?
Well, I think that the typical concerns really tie back to what I just discussed, is about how's the data being used, or am I being tracked? And we address those through, again, the configurations or the permissions, or ultimately who has access to that type of sensitive information. And we can manage that through our configurations and capabilities.
I would also say that that unions and worker agreements are our friend, because they put in place a framework. Most of these union agreements allow technology change, but it has to be transparent, understood, and the union doesn't accept it as part of the agreement, but they need to be explained it. And so, in fact, we have, what is it, the largest union in Canada, Daryl, as the client.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
For
right.
their union workers, because they see the value of it. And so I think it's a bigger issue where you don't have a unionized workforce. And often when you're introducing this new technology into traditional locations and that sort of thing, how they view things, you have to spend a fair amount of time in the change management process, identifying the leaders, not only the decision makers, but the thought leaders, the local folks who are recognized as those folks, bring them on board, much like any other change management process, and make that move along. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you both. Next question, how long does it take to implement this technology?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because it actually doesn't take very long to implement the technology. We're a generally SaaS-based. Much of what we do can be done through, an MDM, a mobile data management software. If the organization has that, the time that generally takes to implement is through the change management process and walking through and getting that alignment within the organization. The actual deployment itself doesn't take long. But not to skirt, if you think of the whole, continuum of a deployment, depending on the complexities, the size of the deployment, it can be anywhere from, 2 to 4 weeks. It could be longer if it's much more complex, or shorter if it's less involved.
And we tend to, when we sit down with a large client, let them guide us through, where do they want to start? Do they want to start with their highest risk workforce? Do they want to start with maybe an easier workforce to build some momentum? Do they want to replace existing solutions with this solution that can integrate that, so they only end up with one solution? There's all these sorts of things we work through with them. But generally speaking, as Daryl said, the technology is there out of the gate. We go as quickly as our clients want to and can.
Excellent. Well, that was the last question that I see on the chat function. If any of our attendees or any of our future viewers have any questions, what would be a good way to reach out?
There you go.
There you go.
Right there. Yeah.
Already ahead of me.
So certainly feel free to email me directly. So my address, of course, is on screen, and we're also at NSC next week in San Diego. There's our booth number there. And for anyone also attending the awards ceremony on Tuesday, we'll be there as well. So yeah, would love to have
I would really, in addition, Daryl, encourage people to drop by, because we've got some new solutions we'll be highlighting there. We have a new Bell X device that's voice activated. We're a big believer in the future of at-risk workers at the edge is around voice and not key entry, and moving away from smartphones to, or at least adding to the smartphone population with other devices. We're also going to be showing, we have an integrated satellite communicator that will seamlessly work with our smartphone app. So no more dual devices, things like that. So I'd encourage, we take this innovation seriously, always looking for new devices, and I'd encourage folks to come by.
Excellent. Well, I am definitely looking forward to seeing you both there. That's it for our time today. Daryl, Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. Congratulations again on reaching the finals, and good luck to you at the Green Cross Awards. And thank you to our audience. We hope to see you tomorrow as we host Quanta Services, again, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. Daryl, Jim, thank you again. And you all have a fantastic day. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.